This video is going to explain the basics of fiscal policy. So there's two major problems in an economy. We have a recession, which we're going to talk about first, and then a peak. So recession is characterized by high rates of unemployment, such as, let's say, like 9 or 10% or higher than that. The unemployment rate should be around 5%, so that's, much higher. And generally speaking, that GDP tends to be negative in recessions as production levels fall. So with that in mind, when we look at a recession, we add in the idea that governments can come in and make things better, faster. So if there's a recession, the government is going to enact expansionary fiscal policy to try to kickstart the economy. So if the economy is not doing well, they're going to jumpstart it and try to expand the economy and get more spending and more jobs created. So to do that, there's two things the government can do. And specifically in a recession, they're going to lower taxes so that consumption and investment pick up, because when you lower taxes on people and businesses, they spend more. When they spend more aggregate demand. And they're simply just going to increase their own spending to create jobs that way. So what the government wants to do is increase aggregate demand and lower the unemployment rate. And by raising aggregate demand, it will raise GDP. So as we look at this graphically, price level, real GDP. This is how I always draw the graph. I draw the LRAS first, that vertical curve, the SRAS curve that slopes upward. And then because it's a recession, so here's my potential. Remember that LRAS curve, this is where we want to be producing at. So in a recession, aggregate demand 1 shows that the current level of production is less than our potential. So through expansionary fiscal policy, aggregate demand increases to a point where all three curves meet, so that way we are reaching our potential output. So the key here is that we want to be producing here. At AD1 we weren't. We were producing less because we had fallen into recession. And so by increasing aggregate demand, we can get back to our potential, back to where we want to be producing, and that will help create jobs and stimulate the economy. And so that's the fix, would be the expansionary fiscal policy, lowering taxes, increasing government spending. The other issue in the economy is a peak. A peak occurs only when the idea that there's high inflation. Okay, so that's the problem in the economy. A lot of times the economy is running well and it begins to pick up too quickly or move too quickly or grow too quickly. So what ends up happening is, because production can't keep up, firms have to raise prices faster to try to stop there from being shortages. So if there's high levels of inflation, remember that normal level is 1 to 3%. So we're talking about high inflation, we're talking about 10%, 8%, 7%. So the fix for this would be for the government to try to contract. Again, the problem is the economy is growing too quickly, and that causes inflation. So the government's going to enact contractionary fiscal policy. So what they want to do is they want to reduce aggregate demand. So they're going to raise tax rates. So that way people have less money, less spending, less aggregate demand, as well as decrease their own spending, government spending, to then decrease aggregate demand directly. Both of those actions will have the effect of decreasing inflation rates, which was the problem to begin with. So now as we draw the graph for it, we have price level, real GDP, so we start always the same, that long run aggregate supply curve, short run aggregate supply curve sloping upward, labeling our potential output, that's where we want to be producing. And so if aggregate demand hits SRAS to the right, so current production is above potential, the problem is that we have a price level that's too high. So by enacting contractionary policy, we're going to get aggregate demand to reach back to potential output, lowering price level, so we have a lower rates of inflation, which is going to help. And so again, the ultimate goal is to have all three of these curves meet. So whether we start in a recession and boost it, or we start in a peak and reduce, contract the economy, we always want to end up so that AD and SRAS meet at this long-run potential output. So that's the key. So in this case, here's my AD1. being reduced so that price level falls, so we have lower rates of inflation, which will help the economy.